Welcome to Her Fantasy Football. You can hear us on Blog Talk Radio /Her Fantasy Football, iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. If our podcast isn't enough for you, you can also listen to us Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio on Channel 87, Sirius 210. You can also ask us your dying questions on Twitter at Her Fantasy FB and on Facebook /Her Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Courtney Kirby.
And I'm Ashley Williams.
And I'm Brandon Lee.
It's week 2, but before we jump into the matchups, make sure you hop over to herfantasyfootball.com and sign up for our mailing list because you get to join the new fun game Diced that we have going on. It's a free contest. You can win prizes, and it's lots and lots of fun.
Yeah, last week. So there's a show that's on some channel where people make food. I don't know any copyright laws, so we're going to be vague.
Yeah, it's like we're aware of the show. We're just being vague.
And the show's name has something to do with cutting up vegetables. So we decided to do something like that and call it Diced. And so we have a basket and we open it and it has 4 ingredients and you have to use them in your FanDuel lineup each week. So last week we had Jeremy Maclin. That's right, a straight up player you had to play. A rookie, a quarterback with an away game, and a Seattle Seahawk. And, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And actually, congratulations to Mac J. That is the username of the person who won. And Mac J, if you're listening, send us an email. We're not quite sure who you are. We're going to contact FanDuel. So we set up this contest, and we didn't realize we need to figure out who these people are when they win. Because you won a Pro Football Focus Gold Fantasy Football membership subscription for the year, which is awesome. Thank you to Mike Clay for providing that. So each week we're going to have different prizes. Come and play. It's a lot of fun. And we got a good response on Twitter. Everyone was like, oh, how fun. It's crazy, but it's fun.
Yeah.
So
we got to get one of the eggs. We're going to get the egg and open the egg. You know, those YouTube videos that everybody will do the egg, and then we'll pull out our diced ingredients.
I like it.
Diced.
Reveal it. I like it.
Calories.
A little figurine, like Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. So hop on to herfantasyfootball.com. You can hear from us there as well. Let's hop into Thursday night football.
Hey.
Number 2, Denver Broncos, Kansas City Chiefs. Man, let's all be honest. Denver really screwed our fantasy teams last week.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, where do I begin? Peyton Manning. I'm sure he affected a good, 8 of the fantasy teams out there. I can't believe it. It's so crazy. He was a complete disaster. Teams are going to force Peyton Manning to throw the ball downfield, right? This is a great opportunity for Peyton Manning just to throw the ball downfield against the Kansas City Chiefs, okay? But don't forget, preseason we're all talking about how this offense was going to run. Well, Peyton threw 40 times. So that was a bunch of BS. Now, granted, he only had 17 completions. That, my friend, is not good odds. But
in good news, he was overthrowing people.
It's true. It's true.
That's
true.
That's what you feel good about.
Yeah.
If you can feel good about anything.
Thank you, Brandon. Way to find that
silver lining.
Silver lining.
It's very small.
It was just a terrible game. I mean, the fact there was not a single offensive touchdown is just crazy to me.
Well, it's a good defensive game. If you're a fan of defense, those are 2 great defenses. And
Baltimore
was
a defensive game. I mean, I guess it was, but it was a really bad offensive game too.
True.
I don't know who to give credit to.
Yeah.
Like the great defenses or the awful offenses.
I mean, Gary Kubiak said it was the best defensive game he's ever been involved with in his life. But you're right. He didn't mention where it ranked on offense for him.
Yeah.
That's true.
It was the worst offensive game he's ever had in his life.
Did not mention that.
Did not mention that part.
However, I do think it's sad that everyone's acting like Broncos lost. Like, it's the most sad win I've ever seen as a football fan.
I'm sure as football players, they all felt that loss too.
Yeah.
I'm sure they all felt it as a loss too because it was so bad offensively that
Brandon McManus. He's like, yeah.
I played him everywhere.
Me too. I played him on FanDuel. I won $60 because of him. I swear. I think it was just because of him. But I will say it was like the week of the kickers.
It really was.
And I didn't talk about a single kicker, But, because you can go to our rankings on herfantasyfootball.com too, but I just, it is really bad. So, anyways, let's get back into this.
However, these were all the missed kicks.
Oh, the kicking's a huge part of the game now. It got real this week.
It did.
I'll talk about kickers later.
Woof.
Yeah. Let's, I hate to say I told you so, but I'm going to. C.J. Anderson got hurt. I didn't think it was going to happen this fast. But he did it.
I threw that tweet out at you, Courtney. I was like, is it possible Courtney is right?
I told you it was going to happen. I said, handcuff yourself to Ronnie Hillman. CJ is questionable for Thursday night. So even if he does play, you might want, if you had that handcuff, to play Ronnie or play a safer bet against a better matchup on Sunday, because who knows how long he's going to be in for. Sorry, Anderson owners. Not me. I'm not one. The Chiefs gave up a lot of passing yards, though, so that's a good thing for Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. So they're still a go. Owen Daniels had 0.5 points. Yep, that's true. And this week won't be any easier. It's a tough matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. They're pretty hard against tight ends. And you can always start Denver's defense, although don't expect the same numbers as last week. So there's that. Chiefs.
Well, congratulations to Alex Smith. 243 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 15 rushing yards. Very exciting.
Yeah.
3.22.
Where did those touchdowns go, Brandon and Ashley? Where'd they go?
I went to a guy
Not to Macklin.
Kelsey.
Not to Macklin.
Oh, it's true. Okay, so Travis Kelce's the real deal. They're calling him Baby
So good.
Gronk. And he caught all 6 of his targets for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. That works.
Do you think he's offended he's called Baby Gronk?
I don't think so.
No, I think in the tight end world, it's a nice thing.
Yeah. And Gronk is so ridiculous. He's like an enigma.
Yeah, they're not calling him Baby Jacob Tammy.
Yeah.
That would be
Right.
offensive.
Even something like Baby Tony Gonzalez, because Tony Gonzalez is like a gentleman, and, he is like but Gronk is like, kind of fun. It's like a dude, You're like, yeah, I'm Baby Gronk. Oh. I don't know.
I don't think any player wants to be called Baby anything. That's my guess.
I don't know
I
if
think it's
I
cute.
used a lot of analysis that was like, right there, but that's what I'm doing. Listen, I don't think that's going to happen again, clearly, this week, because the Broncos have a much better defense. I shouldn't say that. Houston doesn't have a bad defense, but I think they were really caught off guard by the Kansas City Chiefs and how with it they were. I think it just really blew them away.
Versatile. They were so versatile. They looked really good.
Because the
I'm
Texans
going to say
are
also, Jeremy Maclin did not catch a touchdown, but he did have 5 catches for 52 yards, and he was all over the place, and he had some big catches called back on penalties. They're just moving the ball. But I don't think his first touchdown is going to be against Aqib Talib or Chris Harris, so I think we have to wait till week 3. But, and then Jamal Charles is a beast. So there's your analysis. And then I'm not starting the Kansas City defense because I think that the Denver offense is going to get better, but it may not be a bad option for you.
Especially in daily. If you're going to risk it, I'd do it.
Yeah. I just hate Thursday night games. But
that's true. That's
It's true.
But usually blowouts, though. Who will be the blowout?
I don't know.
Who will be the one that gets blown out? That's the question.
These are 2 good
Absolutely,
defenses. I'm
Ashley.
not quite sure I want any of these offensive people on my team.
Well,
putting it out there.
It's tough. Let's get into Sunday's games. Set your lineup, guys. San Francisco 49ers at the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well. One of my good calls is that the San Francisco defense wasn't going to be so terrible. Now, also, the Minnesota offense was really bad. But still, San Francisco looked like the team I actually thought they were last year. The defense was good. They ran the ball the whole time. I wish they would have done that with Gore last year. They could have won more games. But listen, welcome, future Hall of Famer Carlos Hyde.
Oh, he had an
No
incredible
overreaction
game.
whatsoever, I'm sure.
Amazing.
No, but honestly, I mean, we were getting questions about whether or not to start him last week, and every league that I have him in, I started him in. I was like, listen, if I drafted him, I have to start him.
Absolutely.
Now I'm in 15 leagues, so I only have him in a few out of those. But the ones that I did, I won because listen, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looked great.
He was cutting.
Steelers.
Oh, He was destroying
Everything. He was on all cylinders. He looked amazing.
Yeah, and the Steelers' defense is not amazing, as we learned from Big Gronk. But anyway, in general, they're just not good. No one else was all that good, though. Here's the problem. Colin Kaepernick, only 10.7 fantasy points. Vernon Davis is alive, we found out, but only 4.7. Even reliable Anquan Bolden only caught 4 passes for 36 yards. That is the first time since 2010 he didn't go for over 99 yards and or a touchdown in his first game. So, ouch. And Torrey Smith, I don't know. This is a juicy matchup. I think if he does well, you should try to trade him away. I think things are not good. He had 3 targets, 1 catch, 11 yards. I don't know about you guys, but I'm checking out of Torrey Smith, I think. I know it's only 1 game, but I'm going to try to trade him away if he does well against the Steelers.
I've never been a Torrey Smith fan, so I could get on board with that.
Right.
I'm not either, but I have to say I really feel like the 49ers are only going to get better throughout the season if everybody can stay healthy. I think it's a work in progress. So
And I love their coach.
Am like, hold on, me too.
How
Yeah.
adorable is that guy? Tom Sula. Talk about authentic. That guy's sweating. He doesn't care what's happening. He just cares about his team.
He's smiling, and he's screaming, and he's like all over the place.
of
I'm
it.
into it.
Yeah, me
All
too.
over it. I love it. Pittsburgh Steelers, San Francisco 49ers, as we said, their defense was pretty good, and they were very aggressive last week against Minnesota. Minnesota has a pretty banged-up offensive line, and guess what? So do the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Mhm.
So that's going to be a thing. Ben Roethlisberger won't be able to make those huge passes down the field. It's not going to hurt Antonio Brown as much because he doesn't necessarily make those huge, the deep balls, but it is going to hurt Marcus Wheaton, and I did show that in my rankings this week. So just keep your eye out for that. I know he's still the second guy there, but it might be a tough week to get that ball weighed down. And let's talk about DeAngelo Williams.
What a great game.
He had a huge game last week. He looked better than
Yeah.
I've ever seen him in my whole entire life. I mean, he was waiting for the holes to open up. He was making cuts. He looked great. But the 49ers is a very tough rush defense. They held AP to 31 yards and 10 carries. So it's not my favorite matchup for DeAngelo. Even though he looked great, I still would pick somebody else this week. Sorry, DeAngelo. But continue to play Heath Miller. I think Ben's going to keep trying to pass that ball off, and he was great last week in PPR. So he's looking for him. Big Ben keeps looking for him. Play Heath these first couple of weeks, so as long as you have him. Houston Texans at the Carolina Panthers.
Arian Foster update. Coach Bill O'Brien ruled out Foster for week 2. The Houston Chronicle is saying that he'll be back by week 5. I want him back yesterday. So, whatever. It's not official, but the Texans are going to go with Ryan Mallett because no one has any patience and or decision-making skills. Listen, you know who Brian Hoyer is, and you started him week 1, and then you go away from him mid-game. I
think it's ludicrous.
Terrible coaching.
It's the Texans organization's problem here. I'm not saying either are the answer, but at least stick with one and stick with him for a while versus making a swap in week 2.
It's
I don't know how
bananas.
Hoyer's ever supposed to get comfortable behind center if he knows that any bad move he makes, he's going to get pulled off the field. I think that's just crazy.
And the Chiefs have a good defense. This isn't like they played this horrible defense and he still was awful.
Listen, he looked terrible.
He did.
But
He
you
looked
that from Hoyer.
terrible. But my point is, he is always that guy. You decided to go with him. This isn't even about you changing lanes now. It's why did you make that decision to begin with? Because now also Ryan Mallett's second guy, right? And it's like maybe he can get pulled mid-game now. Anything goes. I don't.
Of course anything goes. It was anything goes last year too.
I sent out a tweet, and I said until Arian Foster's back, I'm not starting anyone from this team. And then, DeAndre Hopkins blew up, and good for him, and good for garbage time, because that's what happened, and that's cool. And I will eat my words. I'll start DeAndre Hopkins, but I will also realize that he may have really bad games, because these people are terrible. That includes Alfred Blue. I mean, listen, they went away from the run because they got blown out right away by Travis Kelce, basically, on his own. So they went away from the run. He only had 42 yards. I can't really judge him on that, but no one's going to start him anyway. Oddly enough, Nate Washington got 11 targets and 6 catches for 105 yards. Cecil Shorts, 8 targets, 4 catches for 57 yards. That's certainly not as productive. But that's because they were behind. Again, watch the games. You know, I'm not picking up either of those guys, but I had to.
But I do think the Texans will be playing from behind all season.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But the Carolina Panthers have a good defense as well. Offensive coordinator Mike Shula said that they need to get Greg Olsen involved more. He killed a lot of our fantasy teams last week. Let's just be honest. 1 pass for 11 yards. No one expected that. Very sad. But he did get a touchdown reversed on an offensive pass interference call. He had another big catch that was taken back. Still, only 3 targets is concerning. But look for him to rebound against the Texans. You know, certainly Kelsey had his way with him. So obviously not great against tight ends would be the way to put that. Scariest part really is that Cam Newton was the top fantasy option on this team last week, and he only scored 12.5 fantasy points as the starting quarterback, which, by the way, everyone was like knocking Jameis Winston, which I'll discuss later, but Cam Newton had less points than Jameis Winston. They only had 175 passing yards total, and most of those went to Jericho Cotchery, the touchdown vulture of 2 years ago, if we remember that. It was like whenever there was a random touchdown, it was Jericho Cotchery. Well, he's back. Another random touchdown. I'm worried about Jonathan Stewart versus the Houston run defense, but I'm not worried long term. He's fine. And Graham Gano missed 2 kicks. Start paying attention to kickers. I held this up earlier. This is how many kicks were missed. All of these circles, and these were extra points missed.
Yeah.
Kicking game is a real deal, you guys. So look and see how many, and not all sites, like Yahoo doesn't show the missed kicks unless you negate for mixed kicks. So I got this from missed kicks. I got this from ESPN. I just want to make sure you guys have resources to find missed kicks. People are getting really ticked at their kickers, but they're all missing. So it's weird. It's a weird time.
Well, what's baffling is that these guys can make 30-yard field goals pretty much no problem last season. And for some reason, it's like a mental cluster beep in their heads that the extra point's been pushed back because they're all missing. They're almost all missing.
I don't know how Blair Walsh has a job.
I bumped up Greg Zuerlein, like big time in my rankings for to other people because I'm like, he's one of the only guys who made his kicks.
Who?
Greg Zuerlein.
Oh, yeah. Chandler Catanzaro is my new best friend.
Right? Yeah, Dan Carpenter was, up there. I mean...
Hey. It's week 1, you guys. It's week 1, It could
the missed kicks
be Chandler next week.
But the missed kicks have been happening since the preseason for a lot of these guys.
It's a problem.
It's a problem. Are we moving to the next one?
We're moving on. Tampa Bay Buccaneers and New Orleans Saints.
So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, rookie quarterback alert. Jameis Winston doing it rookie style. Am I right?
Oh, it's so good.
So much fun watching that.
Mike Evans is going to break all those records as a wide receiver with his rookie quarterback. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think I called that. No, I didn't. Started his career 210 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And unfortunately, the rookie going up against him got 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in the first half. So that was not good.
If you watch the semifinals of college last year, it was Winston against Mariota, and sure enough, it was like a repeat on Sunday of that game.
I hadn't realized he's never beat Mariota. I didn't realize he's never beat him.
Mariota is a monster, and I think that it was a big FU, and I loved every minute of it. I mean, we guessed on who was going to have the better game, and, everybody said Winston. He has the better targets, right? They're huge. It's just like...
I didn't think Mike Evans would be out. That did change the game for me. I thought he would end up playing.
Yeah, but still, I mean...
no. I mean, no comparison.
Tennessee is feeling great, because they're like, not only did they get generally perceived the more stand-up guy, but they didn't get a first-round pick either, and they feel like they won the jackpot right now.
Oh, yeah. And I'm so happy to be wrong on that match, on that.
Me too.
Oh, yeah. So happy to be wrong.
Oh, yeah. But I will tell you one thing, though. We're sitting here laughing, and we're like, oh, rookie game. But I just want to point out that Jameis Winston scored more fantasy points than Russell Wilson, Tyrod Taylor, Matthew Stafford, Sam Bradford, and Cam Newton, and I mean, you get the picture. I could keep going. So I'm gonna later talk to you about Joe Flacco, but
Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning, exactly. So listen, it was a bad thing. His first pass was an interception, but so was Brett Favre's. So now I'm not saying he's Brett Favre. Do not get me wrong, but I am saying I'm not willing to throw the complete, the baby out with the water on this one. The problem is, Tennessee is not known for being a killer defense. Now all of a sudden people are like, oh, it's a tough defense. What, because of one game against Jameis Winston?
Yeah.
No, it's not. I'm sorry, their defense did not do a 180. He had a bad game. But luckily he's going up against another easy defense, the Saints. Now he's going to be in New Orleans, which is tough because they play really tough at home, but not their defense. So I think he may bounce back a little bit. Also, I think Austin Seferian-Jenkins is the real thing because he had 7 targets. And they had never done that before. I don't know why they all of a sudden decided to do this, but hey,
because that's what rookies do. They throw to their tight ends. They have to do it. They have to rely on somebody. It's the closest person to them. They're going to throw to the tight end. That's why I picked him up, and I had him on all my leagues, is because you need him. I mean, that's who James Winston needs. He needs him.
And Delaney Walker scored a touchdown. Same philosophy.
Same philosophy. That's my philosophy. If it's a rookie quarterback, you get the tight end, even if it's Jacob Tamme.
And for some reason, if you do play FanDuel, he is still at the tight end minimum of $4,500, which is ridiculous. He will be great. Mike Evans is still questionable with a hamstring injury, limited to practice on Wednesday. Keep an eye on that. I don't feel great. Vincent Jackson was a huge letdown. I thought he would get tons of work, and then he got 11 targets, but only caught 4 of them for 51 yards. And they went away from the run because they got down as I said, 4 touchdowns in one half bad. So they went away from the run. But Doug Martin didn't look bad, though. But he only had 11 carries. But he got 52 yards off of that.
Right. Good,
so that's not
numbers.
bad. No, not bad. And then he caught his 1 target for 2 yards, whatever. But it'll get better for Doug Martin. I still have faith in that.
Saints.
Good. Guys, we are now over 20 minutes in the show, and it's my first team.
Yeah.
I was up the whole time. I actually realized I had no 4 o'clock game, so I'm like done.
Oh, I love it. I was like, woof, I don't talk for a while. Nice. The Saints, and then I have to talk about them first, so that's a bummer. Drew Brees. He had 48 passes for 355 yards. But the issue was 1 of 4 trips to the end zone actually ended in a touchdown, and that was a 12-yard pass to Brandon Coleman. But we did call Brandon Coleman as a good sleeper.
Yes.
So there we go. I hope you guys did play him. But Brees was the 12th highest scoring quarterback in standard leagues. But like Brandon, I also listed quarterbacks that surprised you that had more points than him, such as Alex Smith, Marcus Mariota, Nick Foles, and Andy Dalton. Guys, it was officially a very weird week. It was a very, very weird week, as predicted in week 1. But the good news is that they're playing Tampa Bay, who give up the 3rd most points to quarterbacks thus far. Again, granted, but this is good news for Drew Brees. He should have a fantastic game. Mark Ingram. We have a bit of a committee on our hands at the moment. But Ingram still did well. So Kyrie Robinson split some of the carries with him. Ingram had 9 for 24 yards. Robinson had 8 for 18. But what's really good news for Ingram owners is that he caught 8 of 9 passes for 98 yards. Now, what you can expect is probably a similar split when CJ Spiller comes back. And CJ Spiller will probably be the one to receive those passes. Kyrie Robinson is going to go away. So don't get all crazy on the waiver wire. Unless you want to pick him up and drop him right away. When Spiller's back, he'll be the guy. Tampa Bay does give the 11th most points to running back, so you can expect similar production this week. And then just a little quick update, CJ Spiller's knee was limited during practice, so keep an eye on whether he's actually going to play or not. I'm going to guess he's not going to play, but make sure you keep an eye on that. And then Brandon Cooks, guys, do not freak out. He should have a much better showing this week against Tampa Bay. Gives up the 7th most points. He had Peterson on him. We knew he wasn't going to get anything. It's part of the reason we said play Coleman, and we were right. So hopefully you listened and perhaps did not play Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, you played Brandon Cooks. You don't bench Brandon Cooks.
You do when Peterson's on him.
Most people did not draft Brandon Cooks and them.
And they are
All right, Detroit Lions and Minnesota Vikings.
Yes. So the Lions, also an interesting game. So this game, gosh, let's wait. All right, Matthew Stafford, 246 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions as well.
Who didn't throw 2 interceptions this week?
I know, but come on.
Ugh.
Marcus Mariota.
Stafford's touche. Stafford's
Hall of Famer.
arm did fully participate in practice today. He believes he'll be ready to play in Week 2 against the Vikings.
Brandon's already declared 2 future Hall of Famers within the
Yeah.
first 20 minutes of the show of their first game.
Well,
I'm
she's
making
joking. Yeah,
I love that.
she's
I
making
love
fun of
that. We're
everybody
gonna hold
else.
you. We're gonna hold you to that.
Well, and when they are, I
Yeah,
want my own
yeah.
jacket.
There
Yeah,
you
you
go.
bet.
There you go.
Sorry, Rash.
So guys, I don't know what to do. Abdullah.
Legit.
Good.
It's
He
real.
looks really good. He finished the game with 50 yards on 7 carries, and tacked on more with 4 receptions for 44 yards. He was the 9th highest scoring running back, and he's still not listed as a starter. And Joique Bell, while he played 21 snaps, he had not even nearly the same kind of production that Abdullah had. He only had 14 yards off 16 attempts. So that's a problem.
I think he came back too early.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
so
still
too. I
injured.
think he's still
I think
injured.
it's
I think he's still hurt, and I think it's a problem. And I think you can't play Bell if you're gonna do it. You have to play Abdullah. Play Abdullah in a flex.
And you probably didn't get both because they were going at the same time in the draft.
So you gotta, this is a tough one. This is a really tough one because you're not gonna be sure when or if they make that shift. They seem pretty hard pressed that Bell's their guy, but Abdullah just looks fantastic. So I don't know how you jump ship like that when he's playing so well. So this is one you have to really, really watch, and really, in my opinion, play this in a flex if you can. Calvin Johnson, we have got wide receiver woes with Detroit. 2 catches for 39 yards. Lance Moore had 1 catch for 22 yards. Golden Tate 4 catches, but for only 24 yards, and he was targeted the most 8 times. So, I mean, that's just not good. So
I think San Diego's better than what anyone's talking about, though. I will say that. I think their defense is legit. I think their offense is legit. And I think it's really weird that I have not heard one football program talk about the San Diego Chargers in more than like a footnote. It's very interesting.
It is. I think they're better than they are being perceived as well. But according to numbers this year, and this I'm very leery, when we say give up the fewest points, this is based off one game. But the Vikings apparently give up the 2nd fewest points to wide receivers, which again, you were playing Colin Kaepernick and his wide receiving core. So let's not get too crazy.
Congratulations, Vikings! This is your moment.
It's your moment. Your moment, Vikings.
You really stopped Colin Kaepernick.
They also lead.
arm.
They also lead the league in most penalties, and pretty impressive. That was the worst game I've ever watched.
So, at my point is, if you're to play anybody, you're playing Amir, and you're maybe going to play Eric Ebron, who had 5 targets, 4 catches, 53 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah,
Again, the week of tight ends, Ebron got in there. He looked decent. Nightmare. That's it.
There we go. Well, let me go ahead and have my little rant about the Minnesota Vikings.
Where do we begin?
Man, did the Vikings have a bad first game. If I saw one more yellow flag on that field between them and San Francisco 49ers, I was going to freak out. I thought the announcers were literally going to jump out and be like, what? I mean, it was worse. It was worse than, like, 6th graders playing football. It was so bad. It was so bad. Work it out.
Stefania Bell retweeted one of my tweets actually last night. It was hilarious because I said, at this point, can both of these teams lose? That seems only appropriate. And she retweeted it, and it got like, because she's famous, so it gets like all these like retweets and favorites. And I was like, yes. So I was like, no, literally, this is the worst. The first half of football,
awful.
worst ever.
So
Until
bad.
Carlos Hyde took off, it was, ugh.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And that was even Stefania Bell's team.
Yes.
She's the 49ers. Yes.
Woof.
That's how bad it was.
Bad, but it is week number 1. People step off the ledge. AP still AP. You're gonna go with him, even though his coaches don't know what the heck they're doing. They put him in shotgun for that many more times next week. I'm literally gonna lose my mind. And why do you only give the man the ball 10 times?
We had a very healthy fight about this because we feel differently.
Just can't.
Your AP, you should be able to produce whether in the shotgun or not. I agree it's bad play calling, but he sat there on the sidelines, pouted, making little upset faces, and he didn't look like he gave a crap out there. Per Ashley's personal opinion.
He's sitting there going like, that's why I want to be traded. Yep. That's why I wanted to be traded, and I don't blame him. But I will say that the Lions gave up the 9th most fantasy points last week to Mr. Melvin Gordon and Danny Woodhead. So there is hope this week for a bounce-back week for Mr. AP. So it's going to be okay.
Or
And
Jared McKinnon.
They're so annoying. They're picking on their little sister now. That's how it's going. You can expect the passing game to come back to life as well. Charles Johnson and Mike Wallace aren't Megatron and Golden Tate, but they will have an easier time getting open against the Lions defense. And Kyle Rudolph didn't put up big numbers last week, but we do like the fact that he got 10 yards per catch, which is, that is a plus for Rudolph. So, hey. It's Teddy's got to throw it to somebody, and he has to get the ball out of his hands fast. So
I ended up winning, Courtney, in a PPR, and I had Anquan Bolden and Charles Johnson playing against me, and I was only up by 10 points, and I still won. And I'm like, how is that possible?
Don't talk about it because I had Charles Johnson. There you go. I hate him. Anyways, let's move on because I'm done with the Vikings. Arizona Cardinals, the Chicago Bears. Carson Palmer and the Cardinals get another cupcake matchup this week. Yay, against the Chicago Bears. It's awesome. The Bears did a good job of keeping the Packers from scoring 50 points, so that's a plus. But they did show that they are vulnerable against the passing game. So Palmer, Fitzgerald, a little John Brown, please. Hand it over. Start them, people. The running back situation in Arizona took a big turn. Andre Ellington, I said he was going to get hurt this year. I didn't think again it was going to be in week 1, but
week 1.
Didn't draft him in any of my leagues. Sorry if you did. But CJ 0K at this point will get another shot at proving himself. So I'm actually excited about him. Although they didn't give up much point, they were able to stop Eddie Lacy last week. So tomato, it's going to be kind of tough. This isn't the best game. But I did like David Johnson. He looked more explosive and against New Orleans in the closing minutes. So
and Fells, the tight end.
Yeah.
Some flashes, too.
Welcome to a tight end in Arizona. I don't know if they've had one of those.
This is new. This is a new thing. They must have opened up some roster spots. Said, hey, we might want to use a tight end now.
Yeah, they sat Brian Quick. Oh, yeah, different team. What was that about? We'll get into that later. Let's go ahead into the Chicago Bears.
Alshon Jeffrey, I just want to say welcome back. I'm glad you're not in a cast anymore. That was nice to see. And you know what? He looked good. He really did. He only caught 5 of his 11 targets, but some of those targets were barely targets.
They were Cutler targets.
Cutler targets. 78 yards. I don't love him this week against Arizona because obviously Patrick Peterson is going to blanket him. But still, he's a stud. I felt good about him. You know who I also felt good about? The guy that I defend, Matt Forte.
Everyone loves Forte.
No, everyone thought he was going to go downhill. I was able to get him and Charles in like 4 leagues.
Oh, I have him. He did awesome.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe how Forte was falling in all these leagues. I couldn't believe it. They're like, oh, he's done. Oh, Mark Trestman is gone. Oh, yeah, you mean he's going to go back to rushing instead of catching passes? Oh, but he still catches passes? Okay. I don't have any problems with him. Martellus Bennett, again, I'm sorry, you guys, his floor is so high as a tight end, you have to play him. Caught 5 of the 7 targets, 55 yards and touchdown. Well, he's just good. They always go to him, and he is filling that Brandon Marshall void that's there right now. You know who's not? Eddie Royal. Why? Because that hip injury. He's actually more hurt than we think, so he's questionable. They actually even evaluated him mid-game for concussion. He's kind of just all over the map. And then no-go on defense. Although they were better against the Packers than I thought they would be, but I like the Arizona offense. If they go up against a bad offense, I actually would consider starting the Chicago Bears defense. Don't hold me to that, but maybe sometime this season I'll tell you to do that. Maybe.
Not this week.
No.
Awesome. New England Patriots, the Buffalo Bills.
We didn't talk about headset gate here. We talked about it on SiriusXM. But what I will say is it has nothing to do with fantasy, but it was the perfect way to start the 2015 NFL season with yet another gate attached.
And then the time clock. Did you see the time clock thing?
Yes.
Oh, it's so good. I love it. I just love it.
They're so great.
They're so great.
Uh,
My
And then
daughter learned
Brady
what a
and
cheater
Dorks.
was this week, and that's lots of fun.
which daughter?
Scarlett.
Okay.
We never really talked about cheating before, and we're like, you can't cheer for the Patriots, they're cheaters. And then some kid, accidentally does something wrong. She's like, you're a cheater.
Oh no.
I'm sure the kid's like, I'm not Tom Brady.
Totally misunderstood.
Love it. 5-year-olds. So
5-year-olds.
cute. Yeah, so that happened, but it doesn't really matter because the Steelers decided to try something really tricky, and it was not defending Rob Gronkowski. It didn't work, and I got news for you. Rex Ryan and the Buffalo Bills, I'm not gonna do that. In
No,
fact, he was
ma'am.
making jokes about triple and quadruple teaming him, and I believe him.
I'm not sure
I
it's
do
a joke.
too.
I'm not sure it's a joke. I think he might be dead
Wherever
serious.
Gronk's lined up, half of the defense is going to be on him.
Gosh, I would love that if he literally just shifted everyone over to Gronk. That'd be amazing.
Rob Gronkowski Rex Ryan was asked how he's going to defend against Deion Lewis, and he said, "I don't even know who that kid is," and I'm sure no one will know his name.
I love Rex Ryan. Oh, it's so
He was just like, "I don't even care." He's like, "It's Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski. Why are you asking me about this kid that just had one game of decent, by the way?" So I'm going to bring up Deion Lewis because that's who everyone's talking about. Listen, if you have a hole in your roster and you need a running back and you're looking for people, sure, pick him up. Why not? I mean, what's the harm? But I will say that in a game where I thought he was quite good and had a lot of action, he only scored 12 points in standard leagues and only 16 points in PPR leagues. Now, that's not bad, but it's not like mind-blowing. I wasn't like, whoa, what a great athlete. Right. This is crazy. Now, he looked great, and that's awesome. But Blunt comes back next week. He did fumble, and he was saved by Rob Gronkowski getting that fumble. And it's Bill Belichick, and you just never know. So
never forgets.
It is what it is. I will also tell you that Brady has faced Rex Ryan 6 years in a row as like a division opponent. In the first matchup of every year, he has a very difficult time against Rex Ryan. In fact, of those 6 first matchups over those 6 years, he's only scored 7 touchdowns and 5 interceptions and has only averaged 235 yards per game. He's going to be at Buffalo with one of the best defenses that Rex Ryan's ever had. I don't love Brady this week, and I am very leery about the rest of the offense based off of those numbers. However, Brady almost always has the upper hand in the second matchup. So I'm not saying this across the board about Brady, all you New Englanders out there. I'm not saying this. I'm just saying this week I don't love it.
There's a chance he gets Andrew Luck. There's a chance.
There's a chance. But you know what? Andrew Luck actually ended up with a decent season or a decent game because they kind of let the gas off, or let their foot off the gas. I don't think they're going to do that with Tom Brady. I think Rex Ryan's going to try to, turn the knife. But Scott Chandler is also going to be a touchdown vulture all year. I just thought I'd put that out there, but I don't know if you could ever start Scott Chandler, but it's going to happen. And Edelman, PPR, man, 11 of his 12 targets, 97 yards, never in the end zone. The Bills look good.
Bills look good.
They look so good, the Bills. What a game against the Colts. I knew it was going to be a tough game, but I did not see that coming.
No. They shut him out. I didn't think they were going to score.
It was crazy. It was
so good.
It was nuts. But I had Dwayne Allen, so I was pretty pumped when they actually threw a touchdown. But
yeah, we did too.
Yeah. But we'll talk about the Bills. Tyrod Taylor, guys. So what's interesting was when I was watching the game, I was really impressed by him. I really was. And then you look at stats, and I was like, it wasn't that great. 195 yards and 1 touchdown.
No,
Okay.
but he looked good.
But he looked
the Deion
good.
Lewis game.
He looked good. And he was still the 14th highest scoring quarterback with that. He had a 73.7 completion average in his starting debut. That's awesome. And that is the best since 1991 with Jim Kelly. So New England gives up the 11th most points to quarterbacks thus far. So there's a chance he could have another good game. I'm into it. I'm into Tyrod Taylor as a QB2. As a QB2, or if you've got a flex where you can play a quarterback, then absolutely.
Daily.
It could be interesting.
Yeah.
Now, the running back situation I'm not super jazzed about. LaShawn McCoy, and granted he had a touchdown called back, but 17 attempts, only 41 yards, but he had a total of 87 yards. The Patriots gave up the 13th most points to running back, so he could definitely possibly bounce back. Again, I don't think he's fully healthy, and that's why Carlos Williams got some play. But Carlos Williams only had 6 attempts for 55 yards, but he scored the touchdown. So for some reason, after LaShawn's got called back, they didn't go back to LaShawn, and they threw in Boobie Dixon and Carlos Williams. So
Hamstring injury.
something to be concerned about. This should be a very clear sign to you that LaShawn is not fully healthy. Sammy Watkins, maybe the same case because he had 0 catches. 0.
He had a shutdown corner. He
And only
sucks
3 targets.
against shutdown corners.
It was out of control. Terrible. He should do better this week, though. Percy Harvin is interesting. Pick up potentially 5 passes on a team high 79 yards. Part of that was a 51-yard touchdown and 1 carry for 9 yards. So that's interesting. Now, what you want to look at here is with new quarterbacks is which receiver do they lean towards. Don't get fully sold that Percy Harvin's the guy because, again, like Brandon said, Sammy Watkins was shut down with an excellent corner. So don't freak out. And then Bills defense. I love the Bills D, but I'm not sure I'd play them against a Gronk and Brady. I just. But you gotta have a killer option to not play them though, because they're a top defense in the league. Just be aware that they're not gonna score you crazy points when you're going up against a Gronk and a Brady.
Amen, sister. San Diego Chargers and Cincinnati Bengals. Oh, the life of a Lions fan. They get up on the first half and then they implode. So sad, so sad. But hey, Keenan Allen. Congrats, man.
Hey, buddy.
Thank you. We knew it was going to be your back year. We just knew it, and I'm so excited for you. It's awesome. This week, the Chargers will get a tougher defense against the Cincinnati Bengals. But I say you're starting Rivers and Allen again.
Yep.
Just take caution with Stevie Johnson this week, okay? We won't tell you to be cautious with the San Diego running backs, though. There is clearly a timeshare between Woodhead and Gordon, and Woodhead taking the majority of it, which, thank God, I drafted him in almost all my leagues. I love him. I didn't play him in any of my leagues, but I drafted him. I won't be making that mistake again. Great flex. Yes, absolutely. But yeah, so I'm into both of these guys. This will be a fun game, I'm hoping. Cincinnati Bengals.
So I'm assuming you guys saw the hit on Amari Cooper by Pac-Man. Did you see this?
Yes.
So Cooper's down the ground. He physically ripped Cooper's helmet off, put it in the ground, and then smashed Cooper's head into the helmet. He was fined $35,000 for this altercation, as they have put it. I'm kind of surprised he wasn't suspended.
Is Cooper okay?
He's fine, and Cooper, his response was, very classy and saying that, it's fine and whatever. But that was a ballsy move right there. Literally ripping a guy's helmet off as he's laying on the floor and then smacking his head into it. So
welcome to the NFL.
Maybe I've been sued. Got too much demand. Sue kind of treatment where it's like, wow, they're gonna really hit him with that one, but they didn't. Only $35,000. So you do. Tyler Eifert though, 9 catches for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was Andy Dalton's man. Those two had a great connection going. It was fantastic. I think he's got similar numbers this week. So play him. You got to play him. And, Jeremy Hill, 19 attempts, 63 yards, 2 touchdowns. But interesting enough, Giovanni Bernard also had 63 yards on 8 carries, but he had 6 receptions. So both, as we said, are fantastic plays. Jeremy Hill is still the bell cow, but both are good plays.
Thank you, Ashley. Very nice. Yeah. Tennessee Titans, the Cleveland Browns. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. Marcus Super Mariota is what I'm calling him now. I put on a clinic against the Bucs last week, going 13 of 16 for 209 yards and 4 touchdowns. Mariota is legit.
Yeah.
But before you think about starting him, it was the Bucs D, guys. It was the Bucs D, and this was like a rivalry thing going on. He was probably really hyped up. I played Kendall Wright in a league, very lucky that he got that many points, and I know that. So let's just not all freak out here. Cleveland does have a good secondary, you guys, so it's not going to be the same kind of week, I don't think, for these guys. So Maybe great daily choices, but standard-wise, I don't think I would play it. Stinky had a great outing in week one, though, against them, gaining 74 yards on 12 carries and scoring a touchdown, which is wonderful for some of the running backs that we saw. And Cleveland couldn't stop the run last week, so look forward to Stinky having another good week. I'm going to go ahead and start him again. And that's my Tennessee Titans. Delaney Walker is injured, so keep an eye on him. Make sure he's playing this week. He did have a good outing and a touchdown, but I know, it's sad. So just keep an eye.
Terrell Pryor got cut, but he's working out in Seattle.
What are you going to talk
next
about
week.
now, Brandon?
I know, so I'm never going to speak about him again. But it was the only kind of wacky NFL story that I was following. I was like,
I'm so
wacky,
bummed
it's
because
fun.
in my Seattle and Jets write-up, I made note of it to be like, hey, Brandon. But then I saw
That's
you
so
say,
sad.
I'm not going to talk about it again.
You can't talk about Terrell Pryor, and you have to talk about the Browns. It's sad. This is really bad.
This should be a quick one then.
It is quick, and it is just literally you cannot start anyone on this team whatsoever. End of discussion. Johnny Manziel, 182 yards, 1 touchdown, and then an interception and 2 fumbles. So,
but
and then
what's
Josh
weird is
McCown
that
pulled an Elway in week 1.
it
Why
was a
would you
very
sacrifice yourself
entertaining
week
game.
one?
What I was like yelling at him through the TV. I think that was actually the most angry I got. And I'm not playing Josh McCown anywhere.
No,
Are you
certainly not.
stupid? Are you stupid? You're like 50 years old.
This
You
isn't
know,
the Super Bowl.
Flip it
It's
around.
week one.
Yeah, it's week
It's week
one.
one.
It's like,
No, but
what's
the only thing
crazy-
that people are asking us about is Isaiah Crowell and Duke Johnson. And let me tell you this.
Right.
Isaiah Crowell carried the ball 12 times for only 20 yards. Duke Johnson carried the ball 7 times for 22 yards. I'm having a hard time answering these questions because I can't suggest any of these people.
The answer is no.
The best player on the team was Travis Benjamin. He caught all 3 of his targets for 89 yards, 1 touchdown, and he was not drafted in any of your leagues.
But I got Manziel, Brandon. So we're watching the game, and the first series happened, and Manziel looked pretty good. And I was like, oh, man, Count just lost his job. And then the rest of the game happened, and I was like, oh, there he is. There he is. Manziel.
And their defense is
he
deflated
looked
too.
good at first.
That's what I'm saying. At first,
Good
I was like,
first.
hey.
Yeah, did.
And then
So
it got
sad. That imploded, yep. Not so good. Atlanta Falcons and the New York Giants. Well, one team looked really good last week. Anybody? Atlanta Falcons. Bam!
Julio.
Julio's
So
the
good.
man.
Is the man.
Thank you for not screwing over everybody's fantasy team this week.
Way to go.
Like everybody else. Yes, I appreciate you. And it's going to be another good week going up against the Giants, so you're going to start them. And Roddy White, I mean, why not? It's going to be crazy out there. It's going to be lots of throwing touchdowns. And if Matt Ryan hadn't thrown those 2 interceptions like every other quarterback this last week, he would have had a really nice game. So I'm going to say go ahead and keep him going, keep starting him. And in the running game, Tevin Coleman clearly looks like the better option. Although the 80 yards on 20 carries is less than great, we can work with that. And it's the Giants.
for week
they
one,
gave up
yeah.
quite a few yards to running backs last week, so we're okay with it. We're gonna go with it, people. Giants, on the other hand, Atlanta's defense looked pretty good last week, right?
Yeah.
At least the first half.
Yeah.
They looked good. They got tired because, man, does the Philadelphia Eagles have a bench.
It was a tale of 2 halves for sure.
Totally. I mean,
They also figured out Kyle Shanahan's offense in halftime.
yeah. Yeah.
Brandon, I like to say she got her Kyle Shanahan comment in.
She
got
did.
it
She
in.
always
I
does.
did.
Proud of you.
I
Proud
let
of
her
you,
have
Brandon.
that one. I let her have it. But very much like Denver, the Giants imploded our fantasy teams again. Well, Eli did do better than his brother. It still wasn't good. He had 193 yards and no touchdowns. He could have had another disappointing game, but I think it will be better. I do think it will be better because it's going to be a shootout. He's going to have to throw to Mr. ODB. He can't rely on his running backs telling them not to score touchdowns because that was the thing. But on that note, Rashad Jennings looked good, and I'm pretty impressed with how good he looked. He would have had 2 touchdowns if Eli would have let him score. So I'm really okay with that. I was
That made 0 sense.
a little disappointed with Vereen's first outing. Hopefully they'll get that worked out, and they'll give him the ball more. They'll target him more. And again, I know you guys, ODB, it's Odell Beckham Jr. He's your guy. You're starting him. It is Atlanta's defense, and although they looked better last week, they're not going to do the. They're gonna slow down. They're gonna slow down at half. So let it happen. Yep.
Yeah.
St. Louis Rams, the Washington Redskins.
I thoroughly enjoyed the Rams-Seahawks game. Oh, man, was it good. Go
So
Rams.
good. Go Rams.
Nick Foles, 10th highest scoring quarterback. And he did have 2 fumbles, but if you take those 2 fumbles away, like Courtney said, all the 2 quarterbacks basically had 2 turnovers of some nature. But
Not
he
Mariota,
looked-
future Hall of Famer.
other than the future Hall of Famer, he looked good. His passes were dead on. He was threading balls in like mid-season form against the Seahawks. He looked great. He had a 66.7% completion. He threw for 297 yards and a touchdown. So that was great. Now, Washington does give the 9th fewest points to quarterbacks. Washington's defense actually looked pretty decent, but
They did.
I was impressed. I was impressed with Nick Foles. And Benny Cunningham. Now, while we said you shouldn't play him, I will say the rushing was not great. Only 16 attempts for 45 yards. But overall, he had 20 touches and 122 yards total. So, he's got pretty good hands. So what'll be interesting to me is that Trey Mason might be coming back this week. It's looking more likely than not. Him and Todd Gurley played each in practice in full. Gurley's not likely to play, but Mason is. So what does that mean for Benny Cunningham? I don't know. None of us know for you because this is the Rams and they like to mess up your day. And Tavon Austin also deceptively looked great, but actually had 2 receptions for -2 yards. Able to parlay that up into like 13-point in the standard league game because he returned a punt, so know your settings, people, know your settings. But while I say Jared Cook, great tight end option for you. And then Stedman Bailey actually was also good with Brian Quick out. He by far was the best. He had 19.3 yards per catch. Granted, he only had 3 catches, but it was still the better receiver out of the team. Oh, I'm up again with the Redskins.
Yeah, you are,
What happened
Ashley.
with but Brian Quick, do we drop him? We have to talk about this. Everyone's talking about Brian Quick. What's happening?
We have to talk about it because
We
why
have to.
would you deactivate him at the last second when we all thought he was like the most viable option for the St. Louis Rams? Right? I mean, that's crazy.
I don't know what you do.
I get it. You need more people in special teams, but why Brian Quick?
Like,
It's
it made
crazy.
no sense. What happened to Brian Quick?
What happened to Brian Quick?
The next Lifetime movie, along with what happened to Trent Richardson. What happened to Brian
Why
Quick?
would Brian Quick? It's the Rams. Nobody will tell you. Nobody will know. Nobody will know.
I don't know.
Are you
I don't
keeping
know
him?
if to drop him or not.
I'm not keeping him. Are you keeping him?
I say keep him for one more week, unless you have a Des Bryant, Deshaun Jackson disaster on your team that you have to bench for 4 weeks because of injury. I say keep him. I think he might actually come back this week and like all of a sudden be totally fantasy relevant.
Yeah, that's my fear. My fear is that I drop him, he comes
Yeah.
back, and Nick Foles makes him look good, and then he's all of a sudden like a viable guy in PPR leagues.
Here's my issue. You got
My
to know
other
your
fear
league.
is that he's going to be dropped from the team. I don't understand what happened.
Yeah, they had deactivated him for special teams. I just don't understand how you don't prepare.
But he had been injured prior too. So for all you know,
That's true.
he wasn't
It wasn't 100%.
100%. They did what they had to do to get a special teams player.
Still
It is
weird
against the
as hell.
Seahawks. It is weird, and what makes it even harder in this situation is with all the other injuries, with Deshaun Jackson, with Des Bryant. Like, what do you do? Like, this was like wide receiver, like, free for all this weekend. Terrible. Which brings me to the Redskins. So Deshaun Jackson, hamstring, expected to miss 3 to 4 weeks. So that's not great. Wide receiver Ryan Grant, he basically played in Jackson's place. But so did Rashad Ross, could also see some playing time. So no one really knows who's going to fill in his spot. So if you're going to do anybody, it's going to be Pierre Garçon, and that's even dicey. But he did have 74 yards. So that was probably one of his better games. Could take that and all last season into contention. But you're
I'm not
going
going to take that against St. Louis Rams.
but you're not going. Yeah, I say you're not doing it against the Rams, and you're
Ugh.
not going to do it with the Redskins right now. Just don't even go there. Jordan Reed, he did have touchdown, which of course means he's going to get hurt immediately. 'Cause this is what happens to Jordan Reed. He gets a touchdown, everyone gets super jazzed and excited, and then boom, he's out. So while he played, decently well, I still will not play him because he is so injury prone. I cannot make the risk. Alfred Morris, 121 yards off 25 carries. He looked good.
He did.
I have to give him Matt Jones alert since this is apparently a thing. Only 6 rushes for 28 yards. Alfred Morris is still the guy. He is still the guy.
It was the
Alfred
only
Morris is
thing
the
I was
opposite.
cheering for during that game.
Yeah. He's the opposite of Joik Bell.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what I will say is that Alfred Morris is it's a tough matchup, but Marshawn Lynch was able to do okay. He was able to get 73 rushing yards, and he had off 18 carries. So I think Alfred Morris will be okay. So that's pretty much it for the Redskins.
Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would personally like to say a big F you to the Miami Dolphins. You looked so good. I drafted all of you. And then you did what? You did what? You were awful against the Washington Redskins. And what makes this even worse is that they're going against the Jacksonville Jaguars this week, which is another nice matchup. And so you're going to start them because you can't bench somebody playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
What? Dolphins are like
blown if they implode again next week. I won't be able to handle it.
But the Dolphins are that team that plays to their level, that plays to their competition, right? So they're the team that when they're playing a great team, they play great. And when they're playing a really bad team, they are equally bad. Like that, this week, week 1 was a perfect example of the Dolphins play to their competition.
I got suckered in, too, because this is exactly why I hate late round.
Because they look so good in preseason. We all got suckered in. We all got bamboozled.
Ryan Tannehill is why I hate late round quarterbacks. Ryan Tannehill and Eli Manning.
Bad.
It's like I wait on quarterbacks and I take these guys because, they have upside. And, at the end of the year, they end up being a top 10 guy. Because they had 3 great games and the rest of the time they were garbage.
But what will make me happy about that is that Tannehill did score more than Peyton Manning. I'm not sure what Andrew Luck's final score was, but he probably scored more than Andrew Luck, too.
No, Andrew Luck was like a number 8.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. No, he ended up with
That's
17
good.
points.
That's good. Excellent.
Garbage points,
But, whatever. It is what it is. It's week 1. We're not going to freak out, right? Freaking out. We're going to go ahead and put them back in against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's fine. On a positive note, Jordan Cameron, again, a tight end. He had 4 receptions for 73 yards. And as I said last week, you start him as long as he's healthy. You had a touchdown onto that number. That's a great fantasy week for tight ends. I love it. So I'm into it. If you're going off matchups, Lamar Miller is still a starter. But mark my words, you guys, if they can't play up to their level next week,
it's good to be bad.
I'm gonna have to redraft all my teams. It's going to be awful. Jacksonville Jaguars.
All right, we'll do just a quick little rundown here. Running back T.J. Yeldon. His knee did participate fully in practice. Wide receiver Rashad Green was limited in practice. And tight end Julius Thomas's hand was limited in practice. He still has a cast on, so don't get your hopes up. Julius Thomas is not playing anytime soon.
But I'm glad he's back at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Exciting.
But still in the cast. So, and then wide receiver Allen Robinson's knee also was a full participant. Again, these practices were Wednesday because we post the show on Thursday. But T.J. Yeldon, he's going to be more involved in the offense, guys. He's going to be. He had 6-7 total yards, and that was coming off 15 touches. But he's a rookie. They're going to get him more involved. It was the first game. We all told you guys he wasn't going to be super, super involved, so don't freak out about him. Blake Bortles, woof, rough outing. 183 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions against the Panthers. Now, Miami gives up the 3rd fewest points so far, so he is a no-go. Not that you were going to start him anyway, but it will not be a great week. And the top receiver was Rashad Green. Off 13 targets, guys, he led Jacksonville with 7 catches and 28 yards. Wah, wah. That's a 2.2 yard per target. That's awful. But luckily, Allen Hurns had a better game in comparison with only 5 catches, but for 60 yards. So Miami they give up the 10th fewest points to wide receivers, so I don't love any of the Jacksonville Jaguars this week.
Bam. Baltimore Ravens at Baltimore Ravens at the Oakland Raiders.
Putrid.
Putrid. Putrid.
I just want you to know that last week, Joe Flacco walked away with .68 fantasy points. Not even a whole point.
Not even a point.
Not even a whole point.
Best
117
Davidian
yards,
game of
2
all
interceptions.
time.
Unbelievable. I would drop everyone on this team except for Justin Forsett and Steve Smith Sr. just in case you had any flyers. I just think it's unnecessary at this point. And they have to bounce back versus Oakland, or I don't even know what. Then I don't know what to say. Your weekly update on Brashard Perryman. The Houston Chronicle is saying that he'll be back in October now. So we went from weekly update to maybe I only need to do a monthly update to tell you that he's out. But I do want you to know he has a PCL injury, just like Andre Ellington. That's all I'm going to leave you with this team.
That's it.
There's
Not
nothing else to
great.
say. Like, I mean, it's a great matchup, but they were so bad. There are no stats to discuss, so you're only playing them based on the matchup.
I
would
agree.
I'd like to say I'm looking up interceptions right now for the quarterbacks last week, and Andy Dalton had 0 interceptions.
It was a weird week.
It was a weird week.
You know,
Out of
he's going to bounce
everybody-
back to his form, and he'll be throwing interceptions.
Oh, I'm sure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I must not be on the right thing because this can't be right. Tannehill had an interception, didn't he? 6, 7, 8. 8 starting quarterbacks didn't have interception. That's it.
Right.
That's bad.
Week 1.
Anyways, Raiders.
Week
Let's
1.
get into Raiders. Derek Carr. What's up with that?
So he was a full participant in practice, guys. His
good.
thumb. So that is good news. Del Rio expects him to play in Week 2 against the Ravens. Not that they had much of a choice. No one wanted Matt McGloin to be playing per se, other than maybe
They
Marcel
fell
Reese.
apart. Well, yeah, Marcel Reese.
Marcel Reese. He maybe was rooting for him because he had 2 touchdown passes out of his 3 total catches.
God,
So-
tight end. Love
Crazy. Strong safety, Charles Woodson, his shoulder, he was dislocated. No timetable when he's going to come back. And then it's not a great week for Latavius Murray going up against the Ravens. They give the 3rd fewest points to running backs. Like Courtney had mentioned, Graham C.J. Anderson, he went down, but they were able to stop Ronnie Hillman for the most part, too. They're pretty stout on the line, so it's not going to be a great matchup for him. But Amari Cooper, it's no surprise he was the leading receiver for targets. He had 9. Just averages a little over 5 yards per target. And what's really scary is that Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, they were averaging around the same 5.5 against the Ravens, so you can expect the same production out of Amari Cooper this game as last game, which is still not great. So you're not starting anyone from the Raiders.
Per
Long
usual.
story short, per usual, staying away from a Raider.
Thought it was going to be different this year. Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles.
Des Bryant broke his foot.
and our hearts.
Well, but this is why he wanted a contract, and I don't say this in like a bad way. I mean in a support him way, because if he had not signed his contract, then they could have gotten him for a fire sale, and they would have said, "Oh, well, you were injured," even though he's an elite player and
Yes.
deserved the paycheck. So
Right.
good for you, Des Bryant. Bad, sad. I wish you well, but man, this is why people do this. So when people give athletes a hard time, this is exactly why they do that. So I just wanted to point that out. Out 6 to 8 weeks, realistically. They're saying maybe 4. That's a lie. 4 is like when he can maybe start like using a bike. Is basically. So I listened to Stefania Bell on ESPN, and she was doing the analysis, and she was like, "Listen, the shortest it can be is 4 weeks for him to like get on a bike." So. So I don't know what I'm doing with him yet, and I know that's terrible analysis, but I think I'm emotionally scarred.
You're holding on to him.
I think you have to
you
hold
have to.
on.
Or
You're
someone's
not going to get
burn
enough
you.
value.
Right. You can't get the value for it. You can't.
So some of my leagues have an IR, and then it made me think, man, I think all leagues should have an IR. So I put them on IR where I could, and then I didn't in others. And anyway, we don't talk about like strategy or like forming the league very often, but that is something to think about. And when these things happen, you're like, yeah, that'd be great. Jason Witten caught 8 of his 9 targets for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns, which was nice.
Amazing.
And Gavin Escobar got a touchdown too, but listen, it's okay. Jason Witten's still the man in town.
Yep.
Yes.
And now that Des Bryant's out, I think that's where he's really going to be leading. Terrence Williams is going to have to step up, so he's a late round guy you're going to be very excited to have on your team. And if you're not excited to have him on your team come week 3, then the Dallas Cowboys are losing all their games. They really need him to show up.
Yeah.
So it just is what it is. Tony Romo had a good game. But we finally have clarity in the running back situation.
Yay.
Joseph Randall is the guy. He actually looked pretty good. It was pretty good. And as I said,
All of you that drafted him early, you did okay.
no, he didn't. He's not worth a 4th round draft pick, but he looks pretty good.
He'll be worth it.
He's fine. Lance Dunbar was only used in the passing game. I think that will continue. He might have a couple runs, but he's definitely a passing back. And then McFadden was just change of pace. I'm not worried about him cutting into Randall's time. And yeah, I mean, they brought in Bryce Butler from the Raiders. They also have Devin Street and a rookie named Lucky Whitehead. Devin Street, I guess, is kind of the random guy, and Bryce Butler. So if you're really in a deep league, those are the guys. Otherwise,
their kid Lucky Whitehead. I mean, we have to touch on that.
it's good. So it's a good matchup if they had Des Bryant. Since they don't, I'm a little concerned. But you probably have to play them.
As concerned as Lucky Whitehead is, probably not.
Probably not. Philadelphia Eagles. How about that Nelson Aguilar we all drafted so high?
Chip Kelly angers me.
Oh, he's the worst.
The worst.
He's almost
Belichick status.
Yes, he is. Not a good showing for Mr. Aguilar with 1 reception for 5 yards, and that is with playing 80% of the snaps. He was a decoy. That's all he was. So frustrating for us fantasy owners. Don't let DeMarco Murray fantasy points fool you, you guys. He actually was really not that good. He got 9 yards off of 8 attempts and 11 yards off 4 catches. If they hadn't gotten a passing interference call in the end zone, he wouldn't have gotten that touchdown. So it was not good. You know who looked good was Matthews. Actually looked a lot better, and so did Sproles. They both had more yards than Murray.
It's funny, when I was watching the game, Courtney, I was like, why aren't they playing Murray? It felt like they really weren't playing him.
Yeah.
It felt like they were running Matthews as the primary back. That's what it felt like. But I mean, you're right. Point-wise, DeMarco Murray did great, but
they did put him in on the goal line, which is great, right? That is good for fantasy, because you don't care how they get the fantasy points as long as you get the fantasy points. But again, it's Chip Kelly, so I wouldn't expect Murray to always, be put in. Matthews got 1 too. Sproles was used a lot more than I thought he was going to be used, to be honest.
I heard that.
It is very much a running back by committee, and it's all about what Chip Kelly wants to do. Now, luckily for you, this is Murray's former team, so it could be a good week for Murray. They could put him in a lot to be like, thanks for the trade, buddy. Or Chip Kelly could do the complete opposite. Who really knows, Mr. Belichick Jr.? Baby Belichick.
The baby.
Jordan Matthews is a must start, though, although he had that little ending blurb. He's still great. He did really good. It was a great outing for him. And I still like Bradford. Again, if he didn't have those 2 interceptions, he would, which weren't all his fault, he would have had a nice game. And at tight end, Zach Ertz, fan of the week. 8 targets last week. That's a good sign. At a touchdown to his 6 yards, and he would have had a good week. So, into it. Sunday Night Football. Seattle Seahawks at Green Bay Packers.
So this one's really interesting to try to analyze, because they went to overtime, right? So they had extra time to rack up some of these yards and points. But beast mode, Marshawn Lynch. The Rams held him to 73 yards on 18 carries. He was able to get 31 yards on 5 receptions for a total of 104 yards, so he didn't have a horrible game for you. So that is good news. But he fell right where we thought he would, which was in that 6 to 12 range. So as expected, that is what he did. Now Wilson, also, as Brandon mentioned earlier in the show, also did not have a great game. The Rams were able to stop him. But what's really interesting is in this analysis that I saw on ESPN, where he's never thrown for more than 37 passes last season in a game, whereas this game he threw for 41 passes, but he only had 251 yards, 1 touchdown, and an interception. That made him the 15th highest scoring quarterback. But again, these numbers did come with overtime as well, so there was more time to get, those yards and whatnot. And he had only 31 yards rushing on 8 attempts. So it was an interesting game from him. He's going to be better this week. But Jimmy Graham, just give an update there. He had 51 yards and a touchdown against the Rams. So he's kind of just being
better than I thought he was going
better than
to.
I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
He was used in the end zone. And what's interesting is that the Bears were able to hold Martellus Bennett, had nearly identical kind of figures. He also had 55 yards and a touchdown. So I think you can expect similar numbers from Jimmy Graham this week.
You mean the Packers held the
Sorry, the Packers, held the Bears tight end Martellus Bennett to nearly identical numbers. And so I think they're pretty comparable tight ends. I think you're going to get about the same production of Jimmy Graham this week. So expect very similar numbers there. Jermaine Kearse, he was targeted 10 times, which I was surprised about, that he was actually targeted that much. He had 76 yards, so not bad. And then look for your settings again, because Tyler Lockett, he's a rookie, but he did score a 57-yard punt return. And then he had 34 yards as well. Again, not fantasy relevant if you do not get those points as a wide receiver on your settings. So make sure you pay attention to that. I don't love the Seattle defense this week against Aaron Rodgers. I don't like any defense against Aaron Rodgers. It's not my favorite. So it is what it is.
Packers.
Well, first of all, it's at Green Bay, which is very different than if this game was at Seattle like it was week 1 of last year. So I think that that's very important to put out there. I will say that a hurt Cobb got 5 targets, caught all of them for 38 yards and a touchdown. So I feel fine about Cobb moving forward season long. Davante Adams, now listen, he had 8 targets, which was the team high. He only caught 4 of them for 59 yards. Still, he's very involved. So I'm not freaking out about Davante Adams yet. Now, of course, James Jones, congratulations. He got 2 touchdowns. He caught all 4 of his targets for 51 yards. And clearly, Rodgers is looking for him in the red zone.
Yep.
But now everyone knows that. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to break down moving forward. So, yes, of course, add him on waivers or whatever you need to get him, but it's pretty clear now how to defend that. So I'm going back and forth on this. And
I think you got
the
Cobb
Raiders,
as well,
you got
Jones
the
is
Giants.
2.
Yeah.
Adams is your 3. Adams is your 3 in your slot. So
I don't know. I don't know what it is, and I don't think defenses know what it is. And so somebody's going to get open, and somebody's going to have a huge game, and that's what it is. I don't think it's James Jones this week. It's Cobb next week. It's Adams the week after. I think the defenses are confused now. I would say it's actually harder. I don't think it's going to be easier for Jones, but I think it's going to be harder for defenses knowing that Jones bounced back from.
Agree. I'm saying I think it's going to be more even. Because I think Chicago straight up did not think James Jones would be involved in this game plan because he was so new to the team.
Right.
I think that's what we saw. So, and Aaron Rodgers is an intelligent guy. He sees him open, he's going to throw it to him.
Aaron Rodgers is going to find the open guy.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I agree with you, Courtney. I think it's difficult for defenses. I think it's going to be a little different how they play the game.
James Jones isn't going to be the only red zone target.
He's not going to have 2 touchdowns.
I think we'd agree, still view James Jones as a wide receiver 3 in terms of your fantasy roster.
Yeah. Eddie Lacy's the man. Aaron Rodgers is the man. Richard Rodgers is overrated again. And obviously Seattle's a tough defense. However, in Green Bay, I still feel like these guys are going to score.
Boom. Monday Night Football. New York Jets, the Indianapolis Colts.
So Geno Smith update. Status is still unchanged. He is out for week 2, which means you are still with Fitzy, bearded wonder Fitzy. But you know what? He completed 15 of 24 passes for 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception against the Browns. And you know what? Brandon Marshall did better than I thought he would with Joe Hayden.
It was great.
So that made me a little bit more confident in Brandon Marshall. He was able to have a team high 6 receptions for 62 yards and the touchdown. Eric Decker also had a touchdown, but he only had 2 receptions for 37 yards. That has me a bit more concerned. Now, I'm guessing that Vontae Davis will focus on Brandon Marshall, But I'm not, and this is the guy, he defended Sammy Watkins, but I'm not as nervous that he's able to shut down Brandon Marshall the way he shut down Sammy Watkins. Because if Brandon Marshall's able to play that well against Joe Hayden, he's going to do just as fine, or if not better, against Vontae Davis. So don't be completely freaking out. And then Chris Ivory, baby, woo! 20 times for 91 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns against the Browns, and he had a 9-yard reception. We're loving us some Chris Ivory. It's fantastic.
Love him.
Bilal Powell, he carried for 12 times and 62 yards. That's actually a decent amount of carries.
Yeah.
12 there in week 1. And he had a pair of receptions for 16 yards. I don't want you to be too encouraged about him and think this is going to be, really commonplace. But what I will say is if you're a deep sleeper situation and you need somebody, there's potential there because Indy gives up the 6th most points to running backs. So this could be another really good week for him in terms of you need a deep sleeper. Powell could be your guy. He could be your guy. And then the Jets wide receiver, Jeremy Curley. This is very sad. He views himself as a starter. He is no longer the starter. He's the number 3 wide receiver. And he's really sad about it. He said he was a little shocked that he received only 1 snap in week 1. I'm a little shocked too, Curley. I'm surprised you only got 1 snap, but I'm just sad. And then Antonio Cromartie, the cornerback, his knee injury is being described as hyperextended. Not entirely sure as to when he will be coming back. And that's pretty much your update for the Jets. So we'll go on to the Colts. Andrew Luck. So we're going to go through little stats here. This was the 3rd fewest yards per attempt, which was 5 in a game of his career against the Buffalo Bills. He was blitzed on 49% of his dropbacks. From both sides, I'd like to add, he completed just 10 of his 24 attempts, which was a 41.7% completion rating for 243 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And it's not going to look great because the Jets give up the 6th fewest points to quarterbacks. With that said, it is still Andrew Luck, and he was able to still break the top 10 like Brandon said, so you're still playing Andrew Luck. But Frank Gore, 3 points, buddy, 31 yards on 8 attempts. Man. The Bills, we need it up.
He looked old.
He looked old. He looked hurt. He had cramps. He was cramping up the entire game, so he was pulled out of the game. Actually, a lot of players, if you were watching, had cramps. It's almost like they weren't. It's like their body wasn't fully used to the full 4 quarters. And I think this is something we do see week 1. I think it'll be better week 2.
People are dehydrated. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also doesn't look great that the Bills, we're looking at running back Ahmad Bradshaw, maybe because Frank Gore is having cramps on the side. But I do think it's going to get better. It will get better. But what's crazy is the top receiver was Dante Moncrief with 6 receptions and 46 yards and 1 touchdown. Not great. But you know what? We initially thought that Philip Dorsett would be the guy. But it may be Moncrief because Dorsett had 2 fumbled punts in the game. He lost one of them, and then he only had 2 receptions for 45 yards. Now, granted, 2 for 45 is much better than Moncrief's 6 for 46. But he's also fumbling the ball, so you're not really quite sure what coach is going to look at there between special teams and the actual receiving play. So don't love that. But T.Y. Need had an MRI and X-rays. It didn't show any structural damage, but he has a bruised knee. We're not talking like the bruise when you fell off your bike. This is like a bruise. So that's not great. And then Dwayne Allen, he had 3 receptions for 17 yards, but he had a touchdown. And the Jets actually give the 15th, they rank 15th in yardage allowed to tight ends, so he could have another great game. So look for Andrew Luck, really looking for Dwayne Allen to lean on in this game.
I don't know about you guys, but I really enjoyed having 2 games on Monday night. I stayed up way too late, but I really enjoyed it. It was like more football. I want more football. It's so good. So good. Well, week 1 is done, you guys. You can forget about it or, get all pumped up for week 2 because you won last week. So congratulations. Week 2 will be lots of fun. Make sure you set your lineup before tonight's game. Denver Broncos and Kansas Chiefs will be playing, and then you have Sunday, full day of some football. Make sure to hop over to Her Fantasy Football and subscribe to us so you can play our new fun and free game Diced. Also, you can listen to us on Blog Talk Radio /Her Fantasy Football. You can chat with us on Twitter at Her Fantasy FB and on Facebook /Her Fantasy Football. And you can also listen to us, if you haven't heard enough, on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio on Channel 87 Sirius 210. We'll be there every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. till 10. So come. A little bit more of her fantasy football, just a little bit more.
Yay!
Thank you so much. Until next week, no more faking it.